The Valoran Dominion had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. They had conquered 63 species across 4 spiral arms of the galaxy. Every world they found, they took. Every species they met, they broke. This was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, the weak served, and the Valoran were the strongest of all. When their scouting vessels first detected the radio signals coming from a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, High Commander Torvak barely looked up from his command chair. His officers had already run the calculations. The species was young, barely a few thousand years into civilization. They had primitive spacecraft that could not even leave their own solar system. They fought wars among themselves with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They were divided into hundreds of small territories that could not agree on anything. Another easy acquisition, Torvak said to his advisors. Send the standard ultimatum. Give them 1 rotation of their planet to surrender. The message was simple. It was the same message the Dominion had sent to 63 other worlds. Surrender your planet. Accept Valoran rule. Serve the Dominion, or face complete destruction. No species had ever chosen destruction. Why would they? The Valoran offered survival. Resistance offered only death. Admiral Kang Daeho received the transmission on a cold December morning in the underground command center beneath the mountains of Korea. He was 62 years old. He had served in 3 wars. He had seen what humans could do to each other. And now he was looking at a message from beings who thought humans were easy prey. Daeho read the ultimatum twice. Then he called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Defense Coalition, a group that had been formed just 5 years ago when humanity first detected signs of alien life. Scientists, generals, and politicians from every major nation gathered on secure video links. They argued for 6 hours. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to pray. Daeho listened to all of them. Then he spoke. They have given us 1 day to decide the fate of our species, he said. But they have made a mistake. They have studied our technology. They have counted our weapons. They have measured our divisions. But they have not studied our history. They do not know what we are. He ordered his communications officer to send a response. It contained footage of every war humanity had ever fought. The trenches of the First World War, the ruins of Stalingrad, the beaches of Normandy, the jungles of Vietnam, the burning cities of 100 conflicts. And at the end, a simple message in every human language. We have been practicing. Lewd. High Commander Torvak watched the transmission with growing confusion. This was not the response of a species preparing to surrender. This was something else. Something he had never seen before. A species that seemed proud of its own violence. A species that was showing him its scars like medals of honor. They are insane, one of his advisors said. They are bluffing, said another. They will break when we show them real power. Torvak was not so sure, but he had his orders. The Dominion needed Earth's resources, its water, its metals, its biological diversity, and if the humans would not serve willingly, they would serve as slaves. The Valoran forward fleet entered Earth's orbit 72 hours later. 50 warships, each one larger than any structure humans had ever built. They blocked out the sun as they passed over cities. Millions of humans looked up and saw their death hanging in the sky. But Defense Minister Park Soo-min had not been idle. In those 72 hours, she had done what many thought impossible. She had united enemies, Russia and America, China and Japan, India and Pakistan. Old hatreds were set aside. Old wounds were ignored. For the first time in human history, the entire species stood together. Cities were evacuated. Civilians were armed. Underground shelters that had been built for nuclear war were opened. Factories that made cars began making weapons. Hospitals prepared for casualties that would number in the millions. And then the Valoran made their first strike. They chose Seoul. 12 million people. One of the largest cities on the planet. The Valoran believed that destroying it would break human resistance. It would show the other nations what awaited them if they did not surrender. The orbital bombardment lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, Seoul was gone. 12 million lives, erased in less time than it took to drink a cup of coffee. The smoke could be seen from space. The shockwaves were felt in Japan. The Velarin waited for the surrender. This was the moment when every other species had broken. This was when the leaders would come begging for mercy. This was when the fight would end before it truly began. Instead, there was silence. And then, from the depths of the oceans, something stirred. Nuclear submarines from 12 different nations surfaced simultaneously. They had been waiting, hiding, preparing. Their missiles were not aimed at each other for the first time in 60 years. They were aimed at the Velarin ground forces that had begun landing on every continent. Admiral Deho gave the order personally. Fire everything. The sky lit up with nuclear fire. Velarin landing craft were vaporized before they touched the ground. Thousands of alien soldiers died in seconds. The electromagnetic pulses disrupted their communications. Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons, could not stop the raw, brutal force of atomic explosions. High Commander Torvak watched his landing force disappear from his tactical display. 60% losses in the first wave. 60%. Against a species that could not even travel faster than light. What are they doing? He demanded. They are destroying their own planet. His advisors had no answer. This was not in their models. This was not in their predictions. No species had ever been willing to poison its own world. To stop an invasion. No species had ever chosen mutual destruction over survival. But Torvak did not understand. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had built weapons capable of ending all life on their planet. And they had done it on purpose. They had looked at the possibility of their own extinction and said, "We would rather die than be ruled." Minister Park Suman stood in the ruins of what had been her home city. The radiation was already killing her. She had perhaps a few weeks to live. But she smiled as she watched the Velarin ships burn in the atmosphere. "You think we fear death?" she said to no one in particular. "You have no idea what we are willing to lose." The Valoran had made their first mistake. They had assumed humans were like every other species they had conquered. They had assumed humans wanted to survive at any cost. They were wrong. Humans wanted to win, and if they could not win, they would make sure their enemies lost too. This was not logic. This was not strategy. This was something older and darker, something the galaxy had never seen before. It was spite, and it was only the beginning. 6 months had passed since the first bombs fell. The Velarin had expected to control the entire planet within days. They had conquered larger worlds in less time. But Earth was different. Earth was wrong. Everything about this planet and its people was wrong. The Valoran held the major cities. Their soldiers patrolled the streets during daylight hours. Their flags flew over government buildings. Their ships filled the skies. By every measure of galactic warfare, they had won. The planet was theirs. But the planet did not agree. Every night, Valoran soldiers died. They died in their bunkers. They died in their patrol vehicles. They died in buildings they thought were secure. They died from explosions and bullets and poison and fire. They died from traps hidden in the ground, in the walls, in the food. They died from weapons the humans built from garbage and farming equipment and stolen technology. The Valoran had never seen anything like it. On every other conquered world, resistance had ended within weeks. The survivors had accepted their fate. They had become obedient servants, but humans refused to accept anything. Resistance Commander Lee Junho operated from the abandoned subway tunnels beneath Busan. He was 34 years old. Before the invasion, he had been a school teacher. He taught history to teenagers who did not want to learn it. Now he taught soldiers how to kill aliens in the dark. His cell numbered 43 fighters. They had no uniforms. They had no ranks. They had no rules except one: hurt the enemy every chance you get. In 6 months, Junho's cell had killed more Velarin officers than entire planetary defense forces on other worlds had killed in decades of occupation. Their methods would have horrified the old human military commanders. They used children as scouts because Valoran soldiers did not see children as threats. They used elderly volunteers as suicide bombers because old humans had less to lose. They poisoned water supplies, they spread disease, they turned every street, every building, every shadow into a weapon. Junho sat in the flickering light of a dying battery lamp and briefed his fighters on their next mission. A Velaran supply convoy would pass through the city in 3 hours. It carried weapons and equipment for the occupation forces. "We cannot destroy the convoy," Junho said. "They have too many guards. But we can make them afraid. We can make every journey cost them something." His fighters nodded. They understood. This was not a war they could win with strength. It was a war they would win with patience and pain. Every dead Valoran soldier meant more reinforcements diverted from other fronts. Every destroyed vehicle meant more resources wasted. Every sleepless night for enemy commanders meant more mistakes. 300 kilometers away, in a hidden facility beneath the Taebek Mountains, scientist Yoon Hana was fighting a different kind of war. Hana was 41 years old. She had spent her life studying physics. She had dreamed of reaching the stars peacefully, of making first contact with friendly alien civilizations. That dream had died with Seoul. Now she dreamed only of revenge. Her team had captured Velaran technology in the first weeks of the invasion. Energy weapons, shield generators, communication devices. The aliens had built these things over centuries of research. They were the product of thousands of years of scientific advancement. Hana's team cracked them in months. "It is not that complicated," she told her colleagues. "They have better materials than us, better power sources. But the principles are the same. They just had more time to figure them out." Humans, it turned out, were very good at stealing ideas. They had done it to each other for all of history. Taking technology from the Velaran was no different. Harder, perhaps, but not impossible. By the 6th month, Hana had not only reverse-engineered the Velaran energy shields, she had improved them. The alien shields were designed to stop energy weapons. Hana modified them to stop physical projectiles too. It was a simple change, obvious once you understood the underlying physics. But the Velaran had never thought of it, because no species in the galaxy still used physical weapons. Humans did. The first human soldiers equipped with hybrid shields walked into battle carrying both Velaran energy guns and human rifles. The enemy did not know how to fight them. Their weapons were stopped by the shields. Their shields were pierced by bullets. It was chaos. High Commander Torvak received the reports with growing horror. His forces were taking casualties at a rate that was unsustainable. His soldiers were refusing to go on patrol. His officers were requesting transfers to any other posting in the Dominion. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are primitives." His intelligence officer tried to explain. The humans had a concept called asymmetric warfare. It meant fighting an enemy who was stronger by refusing to fight on their terms. It meant attacking where they were weak, not where they were strong. It meant making victory so expensive that the winner still lost. The Valoran had never encountered this concept. Why would they? Every species they had conquered had tried to fight them directly. Every species had lost. The humans were the first to realize that direct confrontation was suicide. So they chose a different path. They chose to be annoying, frustrating, exhausting. They chose to be a wound that would not heal, an itch that could not be scratched, a nightmare that would not end. Torvak's advisors suggested using extinction-level weapons. They had bombs that could turn the entire planet into glass. They had biological weapons that could kill every human in weeks. They could end this resistance with a single order, but the Dominion needed Earth's resources. The water, the metals, the biological diversity. Destroying the planet would mean destroying everything they had come for, and the High Council had made clear that failure was not acceptable. So Torvak tried other methods. He offered rewards for information about resistance fighters. He promised safety and comfort to humans who cooperated. He tried to create divisions between human nations, to use their old hatreds against them. Nothing worked. The humans who cooperated were killed by their own people. The rewards were ignored. The old hatreds were set aside. For the first time in their history, humans agreed on something. The aliens had to die. In his tunnel beneath Busan, Junho received word that the convoy had been hit. 4 Valoran soldiers dead. 1 vehicle destroyed. It was a small victory. It would not win the war, but it would keep the enemy afraid for one more night. He looked at his fighters. Many of them would not survive the year. He might not survive the week. But that did not matter. What mattered was that every day they fought, they proved something to the galaxy. Humans could be beaten, humans could be killed, but humans could not be broken. Somewhere above them, Valoran ships still darkened the sky. Somewhere in the mountains, Hana was building new weapons. Somewhere across the world, a million small acts of resistance were taking place. A bullet in the dark, a bomb under a road, a whispered plan in a language the aliens could not understand. The Valoran had expected to rule a conquered planet. Instead, they found themselves trapped on a world that hated them with every breath, every heartbeat, every thought. And the humans were just getting started. The Valoran called it the Pacification Protocol. They had used it on 12 other worlds. When a conquered species refused to submit, when resistance continued beyond acceptable levels, there was a simple solution: destroy their culture, burn their history, erase everything that made them who they were. A species without a past had no future. A species without identity had no will to fight. This was established science. This was proven strategy. This was how you broke a people who refused to break. High Commander Torvak gave the order on a cold morning in the second year of the occupation. His ships spread across the planet, and then they began to destroy. The Louvre in Paris. Thousands of years of human art, gone in seconds. The pyramids of Egypt, ancient beyond measure, reduced to rubble. The Forbidden City in Beijing, the Taj Mahal in India, the Colosseum in Rome, every temple, every museum, every library the Valoran could find, every monument that humans had built to remember who they were. They burned it all. Across the galaxy, other conquered species watched the destruction with something like pity. They had experienced the same thing. They knew what came next. The humans would weep, they would mourn, and then they would surrender. They would accept that their old life was gone. They would become what the Dominion needed them to be. But the humans did not weep. Something broke inside humanity that day. Not their spirit. Something else. Something that had been holding them back. Something that had made them hesitate. Made them hope. Made them believe that someday things might return to normal. That thing died with their history. And what emerged was far worse than defiance. General Baek Minji had been fighting since the first day of the invasion. She had led forces in 3 continents. She had watched half her soldiers die. She had ordered attacks that she knew would fail. She had done everything she could to slow the enemy while hoping for a miracle. Now she stood in the ruins of Gyeongju, the ancient capital of Korea. The 1,000-year-old temples were gone. The Buddha statues that had survived wars and invasions and centuries of change were dust. She had played here as a child. She had brought her own children here. And now it was nothing. Minji felt the last piece of her old self die, and she did not miss it. She broadcast on all resistance frequencies. Her voice was calm, cold, empty of everything except purpose. They have taken our past, she said. So we will take their future. From this moment, there is no surrender. There is no negotiation. There is no mercy. Every human who can hold a weapon will hold a weapon. Every human who can fight will fight, and we will not stop until they are all dead or we are. She called it the burning oath, and every human who heard it understood. The casualties over the next 3 months were catastrophic. Entire Valoran battalions were wiped out by human forces that refused to retreat. Soldiers detonated themselves alongside the enemy. Fighters continued shooting until their guns melted in their hands. Wounded humans crawled toward enemy positions with grenades in their fists. The Valoran had superior technology, superior numbers, superior everything, but they had never fought an enemy that did not care about survival. Every battle cost them soldiers they could not replace. Every victory left them weaker than before. Captain Shin Tae-ho was 31 years old when he volunteered for the mission that would kill him. He had been a pilot before the invasion. Now he was something else. He had lost his wife in Seoul. He had lost his parents in the pacification. He had nothing left except the need to make the aliens pay. The plan was simple. A captured Valoran shuttle would carry 12 human infiltrators to the enemy command ship in orbit. They would breach the hull, fight their way to the reactor, and detonate enough explosives to destroy the entire vessel. No one expected to survive. The shuttle launched at midnight. Tae-ho piloted it himself. He had learned to fly Valoran craft in 3 weeks, a task that alien pilots needed years to master. The enemy did not detect them until they were already docking with the command ship. The fighting was brutal. The corridors were narrow. The Valoran had the advantage in numbers and weapons. But they did not have the advantage in desperation. 9 of the 12 infiltrators died breaching the hull. They died, throwing themselves on enemy soldiers, buying seconds for their teammates. 2 more fell securing the engine room, fighting hand-to-hand when their weapons ran dry. Tae-ho reached the reactor alone. He was bleeding from 7 wounds. His left arm was broken. He could barely see through the blood in his eyes. High Commander Torvak was on the bridge when the alarms started. His officers reported an intruder near the reactor. They reported casualties in the dozens. They reported chaos and confusion and humans who would not stop coming. Torvak ordered a retreat to the escape pods. But he was too slow. He was always too slow with humans. The explosion turned the command ship into a second sun. Every human on Earth who could see the sky that night looked up and saw the fireball. They knew what it meant. The monster who had ordered their history destroyed was dead. A single human, bleeding and broken and alone, had killed the High Commander of the Valoran Dominion. Tae-ho became a legend. Songs were written about him. Stories were told. Children who had never known a world without aliens learned his name as their first word of hope. But the war was not over. The Valoran still held Earth. Their ships still filled the sky. Their soldiers still walked the streets. The death of one commander meant nothing if another took his place. General Minji knew this. She stood before the survivors of her forces, barely 10,000 soldiers from an army that had once numbered millions. "They think killing Torvak will satisfy us," she said. "They think we will accept a small victory and go back to hiding. They are wrong. Torvak was just the beginning." She unveiled the next phase of the war. Not defense. Not resistance. Attack. They would take the fight to the enemy. They would leave Earth. They would hunt the Valoran across the stars. The other commanders thought she was insane. They did not have ships. They did not have the technology. They did not have the resources. Minji smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We have their ships," she said. "We have their technology. We have scientists who can learn anything. And we have something the Valoran have never faced before. We have their technology. We have their ships. We have their technology. We have something the Valoran have never faced before." She paused. "We have 10 billion humans with nothing left to lose." In the hidden laboratories beneath the mountains, scientist Yoon Hana received the new orders. Stop focusing on defense. Start building weapons for attack. Start building ships that could travel between stars. Start building the tools humanity needed to become hunters instead of prey. She looked at her team. They were exhausted. They were starving. They had not seen sunlight in months. "Well," she said, "I suppose we have work to do." The Valoran had burned humanity's cradle. They had destroyed everything humans had built over thousands of years. They had taken their past, their culture, their identity. They thought this would break them. Instead, it set them free. Humans no longer had anything to protect. They no longer had anything to preserve. They only had enemies to destroy. And for a species that had spent its entire history fighting, that was more than enough. The cradle was gone. But the children who had grown in it were still alive. And they were very, very angry. The death of High Commander Torvak shattered the Valoran occupation. Without his leadership, the fleet broke into factions. Some commanders wanted to continue the conquest. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to run. None of them understood that negotiation was no longer possible. Running would not help. Humanity was done defending. Now they would hunt. Engineer Oh Sung-ho had worked on spacecraft before the invasion. Small satellites. Experimental rockets. Things that could barely leave Earth's atmosphere. Now he was building something different. Now he was building warships. Project Vengeance began in the third year of the war. The shipyards were hidden underground, in caves that humans had carved with stolen Velaran equipment. The materials came from wrecked alien vessels, salvaged and melted and reformed. The power systems were hybrid designs, combining human nuclear reactors with Velaran energy technology. The weapons were human in design but alien in power. Sung-ho worked without rest. He lost weight. His hair turned gray. His hands shook from exhaustion. But every day, the ships grew more complete. They think we cannot reach them, he told his workers. They think space is their territory. They are wrong. Space belongs to whoever takes it. And we are going to take it. The first ship launched 18 months after Torvak's death. It was ugly by Valoran standards. It was crude. It was patched together from parts that should not work together. But it flew. It fought, and it killed. Fleet Admiral Choi Yuna commanded the counteroffensive. She was 53 years old. She had spent her career in the Navy, commanding ships that sailed on water. Now she commanded ships that sailed between stars. The transition was easier than anyone expected. War was war. Tactics were tactics. The only thing that changed was the scale. Her fleet numbered 27 ships. Against them stood the remnants of the Velaran occupation force, nearly 200 vessels. The numbers were impossible. Any sensible commander would have waited for more ships. Any rational leader would have sought a better opportunity. Yuna was not interested in being sensible or rational. She was interested in revenge. "We attack tonight," she told her captains. "We attack fast, and we attack hard. We do not stop until they are running. And when they run, we chase them." Her tactical doctrine was simple. No prisoners. No mercy. No forgetting. The Velaran had exterminated cities. They had burned libraries. They had killed millions. Humanity would respond in kind. This was not justice. Justice was for peacetime. This was survival. The Battle of Proxima Station became the first legend of humanity's space age. The station was a Velaran supply depot, orbiting a dead star 3 light-years from Earth. It held fuel and weapons and food for the occupation forces. Destroying it would cripple the enemy's ability to reinforce. Yuna's fleet arrived without warning. The Valoran had not expected humans to travel so far, so fast. They had not expected humans to travel at all. Their shock lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then the killing began. Human ships rammed enemy vessels at full speed. Crews fought through decompression, breathing from personal tanks while their ships fell apart around them. Pilots ejected into space and used maneuvering thrusters to reach enemy hulls, where they planted explosives by hand. One Valoran captain managed to send a transmission before his ship exploded. "What are you doing? This is insane." "You are killing yourselves." Captain Kwon Jisoo responded from her dying ship, fire spreading through the corridors behind her. "We know." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Proxima Station was debris. 71 Valoran ships were destroyed. Humanity lost 19 of its 27 vessels. By any conventional measure, it was a draw. Both sides suffered terrible losses. Both sides were weakened, but the Velaran were weakened in a way they could not recover from. Their empire was vast. Their resources were spread across 1,000 worlds. Replacing the ships lost at Proxima would take months. Replacing the experienced crews would take years. Humanity had no such problem. New ships were being built every day. New crews were being trained every hour. Every human on Earth wanted a chance to fight. There were more volunteers than there were weapons to give them. Admiral Yuna received word of her victory in the medical bay of her flagship. She had been wounded in the battle. A piece of shrapnel in her shoulder. The doctors wanted her to rest. She refused. "Send the fleet to the next target," she said. "We are not stopping." Over the next 3 years, humanity carved a path through Velaran space. They attacked supply lines. They destroyed shipyards. They liberated worlds that had been conquered centuries ago. Species that had forgotten what freedom meant watched in disbelief as humans appeared in their skies, not as conquerors but as liberators. Not all of them were grateful. Some had learned to accept Velaran rule. Some had collaborated with their masters. Some were afraid of what the humans would do next. They were right to be afraid. The Valoran homeworld lay at the heart of their empire. It was protected by the largest fleet in the galaxy. It was shielded by defense systems that had never been breached. It was the symbol of Velaran power, the proof that they were the greatest species in existence. Humanity's target was clear from the beginning. Admiral Yuna stood before her fleet, now grown to over 300 ships. They were still outnumbered. The Valoran home fleet had nearly 1,000 vessels. The defensive stations could kill 100 human ships before they even got close. "We will lose many," Yuna told her captains. "Perhaps most. Perhaps all. But the Velaran will lose everything. Their home. Their pride. Their belief that they cannot be beaten, and that is worth any price." General Bake Minji joined the fleet for the final assault. She was 60 years old now. The war had taken everything from her. Her family, her health, her home. But it had given her something in return: purpose. "They burned our past," she said to the assembled forces. "Today, we burn their future." The attack on the Velaran homeworld would become the defining moment of human history. It would be studied for centuries. It would be debated and analyzed and questioned. Some would call it justice. Some would call it genocide. Some would call it necessary. The humans who fought it called it only one thing: payback. As the fleet entered hyperspace for the final journey, Admiral Yuna received a message from the Valoran High Council. They offered peace. They offered to withdraw from Earth. They offered reparations. They begged for negotiation. Yuna read the message, then she deleted it. "Too late," she said to no one in particular. "You had your chance. Now it's our turn." The stars streaked past the windows of her ship. Somewhere ahead, the Velaran waited. They had conquered 63 species. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had thought themselves invincible. They were about to learn otherwise. Humanity was coming. And humanity was not interested in peace. 12 years after the first Velaran ships appeared in Earth's sky, the Velaran homeworld burned. The battle lasted 9 days. It was the largest space engagement in galactic history. Over 2,000 ships fought above a planet that had never known war on its own soil. The Valoran threw everything they had at the human fleet. Ancient weapons, experimental technology, tactics developed over millennia. Nothing worked. Humans died by the thousands. Ships exploded. Crews burned. Admiral Choi Yuna commanded from the bridge of her 4th flagship, the first 3 having been destroyed under her. General Bake Minji led ground forces through the streets of the Valoran capital, fighting house to house against an enemy that still could not believe this was happening. In the end, it was not tactics or technology that decided the battle. It was will. The Valoran fought to protect their home. The humans fought to destroy the species that had tried to destroy them. The Valoran could surrender. The humans could not stop. When the last Velaran warship fell silent, when the last defensive station went dark, Admiral Yuna gave the order she had been waiting 12 years to give. Begin planetary bombardment. The Valoran cities burned. Their monuments crumbled. Their history, their culture, their identity was erased exactly as they had erased humanity's. The survivors fled to colonies, to allied worlds, to anywhere that would take them. The Velaran Dominion, which had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, ceased to exist in a single week. Some humans wanted to hunt the survivors. Some wanted to exterminate every Velaran in the galaxy. General Minji, who had sworn the burning oath, was among them, but others disagreed. Scientist Yoon Hana, who had built the weapons that made victory possible, argued for mercy. Not for the Valorans' sake. For humanity's, we have become what we needed to become, she said. Killers. Destroyers. Monsters. But we do not have to stay this way. We can choose what we will be now. The debate lasted months. In the end, humanity chose restraint, not forgiveness, never forgiveness, but restraint. The surviving Valoran would be allowed to live. They would be stripped of their weapons, their ships, their power. They would become what they had tried to make humanity, a conquered species, surviving at the mercy of their betters. The galaxy watched all of this with a mixture of awe and terror. Humanity had done what no species had ever done before. They had risen from conquest to destroy their conquerors. They had traveled from a single planet to burning an interstellar empire. They had proven that the old rules of galactic civilization no longer applied, and now they wanted to talk. Ambassador Han Bora stood before the Galactic Assembly 6 months after the fall of the Valoran homeworld. She was 45 years old. She had been a teacher before the invasion. Like Commander Lee Junho, she had survived the occupation, the resistance, and the war. The scars on her face told her story without words. The assembly was the closest thing the galaxy had to a governing body. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in a structure older than human civilization. They had watched the Valoran conquer Earth. They had traded with the Dominion while humans died. They had calculated that humanity's extinction was acceptable. Now they waited to hear what the humans wanted. Bora walked to the central platform. She carried no weapons. She wore no armor. She did not need them. Behind her stood a fleet that had destroyed the greatest military power in galactic history. Behind her stood a species that had proven it would rather burn than submit. "You watched us suffer," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "When the Valoran bombed our cities, you watched. When they burned our history, you watched. When they killed our children, you calculated the cost of intervention and decided it was too high." She paused. The assembly was silent. No one moved. "We do not blame you for this," Bora continued. "We understand. The Valoran were powerful. You were afraid. Fear is natural. Survival is natural. We would have done the same in your position." Some representatives relaxed slightly. Perhaps this would not be as bad as they feared. Perhaps the humans would be reasonable. Perhaps they wanted to join galactic civilization as equals. They were wrong. "But you should understand something," Bora said. "We remember. We remember who helped us and who did not. We remember who traded with our enemies and who refused. We remember every species that could have stopped the Valoran and chose not to." She let the silence stretch. "We are not here to make threats. We do not need to. You have seen what we can do. You have seen what we are willing to sacrifice. You know that if you ever threaten a human world, we will do to you what we did to the Valoran." The eldest member of the assembly, a being who had witnessed the rise and fall of 100 civilizations, spoke into the silence. His voice was ancient and tired. "We understand your anger," he said. "But we must ask, how did you survive? Every model predicted your collapse. Every calculation showed your defeat. What did we miss?" Bora smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a survivor looking at those who had expected her to die. "You measured our technology," she said. "You counted our weapons. You analyzed our resources. You studied our divisions. But you never measured our spite, our stubbornness, our absolute, unrelenting refusal to stay down." She turned to look at the representatives, beings of every shape and size, species that had been civilized when humans still lived in caves, empires that spanned 1,000 stars. "We were farmers," she said. "Artists, dreamers. We wrote poetry and built monuments and fell in love. We were not warriors. We did not want to be warriors. But you made us into this. The Valoran made us into this. And now you have to live with what you created." She began to walk back toward her delegation. Then she stopped. "One more thing," she said. "Earth is rebuilding. Our population is recovering. Our technology is advancing. In 100 years, we will be stronger than we are today. In 1,000 years, we will be stronger still, and we will never forget what happened to us." She looked directly at the eldest member. "So when you look at a primitive world and see easy prey, remember us. Remember what we were. Remember what we became. And ask yourself if you really want to find out what the next humanity will be." The silence that followed lasted a long time. When Bora left the chamber, no one tried to stop her. No one tried to negotiate. No one tried to threaten. They were too afraid. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as students or servants or supplicants. They had entered as survivors, as warnings, as proof that the galaxy's old order was dead and something new was being born. Admiral Yuna retired to a small house by the sea on a rebuilt Earth. General Minji died of her wounds 3 years after the war ended, honored as the greatest military commander in human history. Scientist Hana continued her work, building the ships that would carry humanity to 1,000 new worlds. And Ambassador Bora returned to the Galactic Assembly every year. She never asked for anything. She never threatened anyone. She just sat there, watching, reminding them humans were in the galaxy now. Humans would never forget. And if anyone ever made the mistake of underestimating them again, they would learn the same lesson the Valoran had learned. Some species look weak. Some species seem primitive. Some species appear easy to conquer. But appearances can be deceiving. And the cost of that deception can be everything you have ever built. The galaxy had thought humanity would fall. They had calculated the odds and predicted extinction. They had been wrong, and they would never make that mistake again.